All right, peace out. See you later. Okay.
I'll just give everyone a minute to come in from the waiting room. And just a reminder for everyone, unless you are presenting or asking or answering a question, please take a minute to mute yourselves.
Oh, mute.
Good afternoon. This is a hearing before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today is Thursday, September 17th, 2020. This is a mandatory emergency informational hearing regarding North End licensees. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. This hearing will be recorded and will be posted on the City of Boston website. Again, please mute yourself if you are not currently presenting or asking a question. This hearing is being conducted based on numerous complaints received by the board and the Inspectional Services Department, including but not limited to the following: failure to adhere to the guidance issued by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regarding social distancing and mandatory operational requirements and the board's various advisories regarding the same, failure to adhere to the terms and conditions of approved temporary extensions onto outdoor patio space granted by the board and the interdepartmental guidance regarding the same, and failure to adhere to city, state, and federal laws, codes, and ordinances regarding tobacco use and the presence of animals in food service establishments, including outdoor patios. And before we will begin, I want to introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Thanks, Leslie, and thank you all for joining us today on such short notice. I'm also joined today by Commissioner Liam Curran and Commissioner Kiana Saxon. And to echo what Leslie said today, we called this hearing to respond to some of the complaints, but also to answer any of your questions today about the extension of the outdoor seating program, as well as the use of propane heaters. So we're going to first address some of the complaints and talk through some of the appropriate responses to them, and then we'll take questions about the propane heaters and the extension program.
Thank you, Chairwoman Joyce. And again, please mute yourself if you're not currently presenting or asking a question. We're also joined by Lieutenant Adrian Troy, Sergeant William Gallagher, and Detective Eddie Hernandez of the Boston Police Department. In addition to that, we are joined by John Romano of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, Dan Manning, the Assistant Commissioner at the Inspectional Services Department, and Janelle Finnerty and Christina Grublin from the Boston Fire Department. As the chairwoman said, we have received a number of complaints, and recently we have seen an increase in complaints. As we previously noted, we are well aware that the vast majority of licensees, including in the North End, are doing everything they can to be compliant and are adapting to the rules and regulations as they've been changed. However, it is very important to remember that this is a neighborhood. This is, as you know even better than we do, this is an incredibly densely populated neighborhood, dense with both licensees and dense with residents. And a number of the complaints we've received lately have been coming from residents. We've received numerous complaints regarding staff and ownership not wearing masks, staff and ownership allowing tables of more than 6 feet, and a failure to socially distance. Again, we know that this is a learning experience, and that is why the board's efforts have really focused on education. If you have questions about what is or isn't allowed, or if you need advice on how to better handle your patrons, we're here to help. We also have a contact at the Boston Public Health Commission. We're happy to run any questions or concerns you have by that contact. But again, it is important to remember, this is a neighborhood. This program was established to ensure that we could provide as much support and assistance to our licensees as possible, but we do need you to work with us. Every complaint we receive, the licensed premise unit goes out and inspects. And in many cases, that you're being compliant, and in the instances that they have to ask you to make a change, all of you have made those changes. But we need your cooperation to move forward, especially given the fact that the mayor has announced we are extending this program in order to continue offering you this lifeline. I'll just take a moment and ask Lieutenant Troy and his team if they have anything they would like to add. Sergeant Gallagher? Detective.
You're on mute, Sergeant. Sergeant Gallagher's on mute. Sorry. There you
Sorry
go.
about that. Last weekend was the first Saturday after Labor Day, so there was a great influx of people into the city, and they really have to have their game on down there, especially with the crowds and the lines. Those were the major complaints, the number of people down there and people hanging around on the sidewalks. So, I mean, the next couple of weeks is going to be real important.
Sergeant. Lieutenant, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm sorry. Oh, there I am. No, just hope for the level of cooperation to continue that we've received in the past in the North End, and the compliance, and we hope for that continued cooperation in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Detective Hernandez, did you have anything to add?
No, I think they've got it all. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing, Leslie. One of the issues we're hearing from actually the restaurant owners is that you're not sure how to control the lines that are outside your restaurants, and at what point do you have to move people along? We don't have a solid answer on that, but I think you have to use your best judgment. If there is a line forming outside, you might want to start taking reservations, taking people's phone numbers and texting them. The state doesn't want to see big gatherings of people, even if that means it's people waiting to get into your restaurant. You're going to have to think about that as an operational, as part of your operations. If we get calls that there are lines, that really is a violation. Again, if it's on a public street, you're not in control of where people stand on a public road. We have to encourage them to move on and make sure that they're wearing masks.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm now briefly going to go over the advisory that was released yesterday or earlier this week, and then we're going to ask Boston Fire if they can give a brief overview of the application process, and then we'll open it up to questions. So as I think you are all aware, yesterday the mayor announced that the temporary outdoor dining program has been extended beyond October 31st, 2020. Outdoor dining on private property has been extended indefinitely for the duration of the ongoing COVID-19 related public health emergency. Licensees previously approved for temporary extensions of their licensed premise on private property may continue to use those approved areas until the board issues further guidance. Licensees utilizing the temporary program on non-contiguous spaces, meaning space not adjacent to your restaurant, where you're utilizing the special one-day program, you may continue to operate pursuant to all the requirements that have been issued previously until further notice. Licensees using the temporary dining program on public sidewalks and parking lanes may continue to use their approved spaces. And again, I want to emphasize that you must use your approved spaces and not extend beyond those until December 1st, 2020, weather permitting, or until further notice. Obviously, with these spaces, there is a heightened concern due to snow removal and the requirements around that. So if you are using those spaces and are requested to remove your barriers and seating area, you're going to have to do so. However, we will revisit the December 1st date. Tents and pop-up canopies will be continued to be prohibited on public property, including sidewalks, parking lanes, and city parks. No exceptions will be made. This is a public safety issue, as they can impede sight lines for both emergency vehicles and for existing vehicular traffic. Licensees seeking to utilize propane heaters may do so only upon applying and receiving written approval from the Boston Fire Department via the online portal. The city has opted to waive the $150 fee for the application and the inspection. However, none of the public safety requirements can be waived. We are looking at the extension of this outdoor dining program is meant to continue to aid our restaurants. We understand that you are one of the hardest hit industries due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and we're committed to continuing to work closely with you to look at new and creative ways that we can assist you during these times. With that, I'll ask Chairwoman Joyce if she has anything she would like to add before we turn it over to the Boston Fire Department.
I don't have anything to add, just to thank all the restaurant owners and the licensees for your cooperation as we are learning how to operate in this during the COVID crisis together. The North End has really done a great job, and I think everyone wants to see it continue. We have to do so safely, especially from a public health perspective, but also from a fire perspective. So I think we should move right into requirements to get a permit to use the propane heaters outside.
Thank you. Janelle Finnerty with the Boston Fire Department. Janelle, do you mind just giving a brief overview of the process for applying for and being inspected for propane heaters?
Hi, Leslie. I'm actually going to have Christina give those directions for the application process.
Great, thank you. Christina, do you mind providing that information?
Nope, not at all. So you can apply through the online Boston Fire Department portal. Once you create your account with your email and a password, you would choose a permit type, and the name of the permit type that you're going to apply for is the temporary heat permit. The fire department requires attachments to be uploaded in order to process the application. Those attachments are a site plan showing the location of the temporary heaters and also showing the location of where it is you're going to be storing the propane tanks that are going inside of the heaters. The fire department doesn't want the tanks left overnight in the heaters, so you need to have that on the site plan. And they also want 2 sets of spec sheets, one for the temporary heaters and one for the fuel storage container that's going to be used. Also, the fuel storage container has to have a lock on it. And once those are uploaded, they need to be in PDF form. And if you're doing it from your cell phone, it might not work as well as it would be if you were doing it from a desktop or a laptop. And please use the Google Chrome browser. Once all those are uploaded, it will come into us and we'll do the intake on it. And then someone from the fire department will be in contact with you to come out to do a pre-site inspection. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Christina. And I'm just going to go over a couple of requirements. Again, we're trying to expedite this and make it as accessible as possible. So please know that the licensing board, our staff, and the fire department staff are always here to answer any questions. One of the first questions we've received that I just want to highlight is that electric heaters do not require approval of the Boston Fire Department or the licensing board. However, the use of any electric heaters, no cords can be running over the public way. So you cannot have cords running over the sidewalk or the street. And again, I just want to remind everyone. There we go. As a reminder, propane storage is always prohibited indoors regardless of the circumstances. So when your heaters are not in use, you cannot leave the propane cylinders in the heaters. They must be removed and stored properly. They cannot be stored on the public sidewalk or the public way. When they're removed and they're not in use, they must be stored in approved metal cages or lockers. Propane heaters are prohibited under tents or any other structure regardless of the circumstances. Those are kind of the high level points on the propane heaters. And we know that there are probably a lot of questions. So I will first turn to whether there's any questions in the chat, and then we'll open it up to everyone in the meeting. There was a question from Cafe Paradiso regarding whether wires can run above the sidewalk cord and then over and down. We'll be looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. And I want to emphasize that. And I think I speak for all of the departments involved in this when we say that public safety at the end of the day is of the utmost importance. These propane heaters can pose a public safety risk if they're not utilized properly and in the correct way. So we will be looking at everything, and the Boston Fire Department will be looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. So if you are seeking to run cords over the sidewalk, please reach out to licensing board at boston.gov. And we are happy to look at your proposal and work with you to do everything we can to try and find a way to make it work. Jorge Mendoza asked, what if we do not have any outdoor space to use for propane storage? And I believe I'm going to ask Janelle to confirm that I'm correct, but I believe the kind of last resort option is that you can remove the propane and transport up to 4 cylinders of 20 pounds each in your car and then store them at another site. but keeping in mind they absolutely cannot be stored indoors. So you could, worst case scenario, put them in your vehicle and bring them to your home. Janelle, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, not like worst case scenario, like if you have nowhere else to store them, but it is an option, and it is no more than 4 20-pound cylinders.
I also want to add some other neighborhoods. We're hearing anecdotally that restaurants are banding together and finding a location that's safe and approved, and several restaurants are storing the propane tanks together. I don't know if anyone on fire can add more information about, example of what that might be. I know we have examples of what the lockers look like available to people, but could you give an example how far away that container has to be, or something that to give this neighborhood some additional guidance?
For example, in South Boston, I think there's 6 restaurants that came together, and they're using a space that is located next to one of the restaurants. Lieutenant Day with the Boston Fire Department went out and inspected the site, and it was, he passed it through. So it has to be 5 feet away from any building, no matter what, and away from all exits. And it has to be in a locked metal cage, or there has to be fencing around it. And once, what is it, Janelle? You can't block egress also. It's a given. But. So yeah, a few restaurants in I think one in Charlestown, they're doing that as well, I believe, in South Boston. So that's all I know of so far.
Something to think about for the North End as well. I don't know where that would be, but the restaurants can propose something like that for approval by the fire department.
And that one of the other points that has come up is that all of these heaters and the location you're proposing for the heaters has to be reviewed and approved by the fire department. They have to be a minimum of 5 feet away from any entrance or exits, and at the very least a minimum of 3 feet away from any table, although that will be reviewed and approved on a case-by-case basis. And for public safety concerns, they may require additional space. We received a request, what if we do not have any outdoor space? I believe we just discussed that. Can you store the tanks in a locked container in your cafe area? Not if it's on public property. Unfortunately, you cannot store any, when they're not in use, any propane tanks on public property.
I have a question.
Massimo, if you don't mind, I'm just going to finish going through these questions and then we'll turn to you.
Thanks.
There was a question, would the city be able to provide the space? At this point, we cannot. I don't think we have space available for that, but we can certainly discuss that internally. Can you repeat what the City of Boston's policy for outdoor sidewalk spaces if a snowstorm hits the north end? Obviously, with the December 1st deadline at this point, we are hoping that we don't have a snowstorm. We're hoping, for all of our sakes, for a mild winter. But I believe, and Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have PIC on this call, but we were looking at giving 48 hours notice.
Now, yeah, similarly to what we did before the forecast of a hurricane, where we sent out a notification to you and asked you to bring in all of the planters and barriers that could be easily blown over. It would be something similar to that. Again, we don't know, this is our first time doing it. And again, I just want to encourage you all, as you look towards the next couple of months, if it's within your business plan to continue operating outside, we encourage you to do so, and to contact us if you need help, if you have questions about what is safe and what is allowed. I know the North End is a little different than some of the other neighborhoods because of the number of licenses and because of the sight lines with the sidewalks and cars. The streets are not closed down. Anything, if you would like to propose something to us, we have recently received a proposal for Jersey barriers with a plexiglass extension. It has not been approved. It's under consideration right now. And it all comes down to public health and public safety guidelines. As long as it does not obscure sight lines and it does not go against any public health guidelines, we are open to any creative idea you might have to make your outdoor space more comfortable in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months. We are hoping to continue this as long as we possibly can. The mayor has made it very clear that it's his desire to extend outdoor dining for as long as we can. I don't know if there's anyone on the call here that can speak to this, but we've heard that when outdoor dining was the only dining allowed, there were 0 COVID cases from restaurants. So it's clear that eating outside is safer than eating inside. And there have been cases that have stemmed from restaurants since indoor dining has been allowed. So this is where we're coming from. We want to help extend the outdoor experience as long as possible. Other cities are doing it successfully. So I think Boston should be able to do this successfully as well.
Thank you. And again, we had another question about whether electric heaters have the same restrictions. Again, electric heaters do not require approval by the Boston Fire Department. However, you cannot run the wires over the street. I'm going to ask Massimo if he'd like to ask his question.
Hello, I just want to thank everybody for their time and support. Any way to do like a 3-wall tent or a see-through tent or something open to the sidewalk where it will block the wind for the guests instead of like per se a 4-sided tent, like a 3-sided tent, or like plexiglass, that almost like a hockey board around the patio?
Massimo, we just received our very first request for something with plexiglass. It has not been approved, so I hesitate to say yes and then have people invest in that. If you would like to, we would need an actual submission, how you would adhere the plexiglass to your outdoor barriers in a safe manner, and show us what the idea is, and then we could share that with our streets team to see if it's possible. So I'm encouraging you to do so. Literally about an hour ago, we received our first request. It's still under review.
And tents are no way, right?
No.
Okay.
Is there anyone from fire that wants to talk a little bit more about tents and materials? On one of our earlier calls today, there were some questions about some of these places. Well, I know these are all in public space, so I guess it's a non-issue.
If you have private space you're utilizing and that you're seeking to request a tent for, please note that that does require ISD and BFD approval. And again, we're committed to working with you and trying to make this process as easy as possible. But at the end of the day, we have to ensure that all the public safety requirements are adhered to. Dan Manning, the Assistant Commissioner of Inspectional Services, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, I just wanted to jump in. The chair mentioned the uptick in the COVID cases, and I just wanted to just so we're clear, there were a couple of cases over the lockdown and phase 1 and phase 2 of reopening that did happen, but it was statistically insignificant. However, since going to phase 3, we've seen an uptick in cases inside restaurants. So outdoor dining, that helped lead to the decision to extend outdoor dining because it's clearly proven out to be a safer environment for your patrons. But I just wanted, since we're on the record, I want to clear that up.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I ask something?
Sorry, Damien? Yes.
Yeah. So I was on this morning too with you guys, and you gave a lot of information. And here's one thing, though. I mean, there has to be. It's like we're proposing. We all agree that COVID is down when people are eating outdoors. We're all so happy to get this 30-day extension. However, we're not keeping people warm. You can put as many of those heaters as you want outside. Those are purely aesthetic. If there's no way to put some sort of barrier, like I know you guys are looking at this thing with the Jersey barriers with the plexiglass around, something like that, just to let you know, approved, not approved, but something like that is very important, because that definitely keeps at least the wind off of me, you know? And then maybe when you do something like that, maybe you can combine some electric, you know, going off up high in the building and stuff. But all this conversation, it's all great, it's all blah, ha, ha, but we're not keeping people warm at night in November and in October night. So they're not gonna wanna eat outside. And for the smaller places, that's gonna be a burden, because to seat people indoors, I have 40 seats in Carmelinas. A lot of people in this meeting have very little seating inside. So when we put the barriers and the social distancing and all that, it goes down to nothing. Jobs are lost. Everybody gets down again. Everybody's upset. I mean, things are terrible for everybody, blah, blah, blah. There's got to be a way that we can figure out some sort of resolution, because there are fireproof tents. There has to be a way to figure out somehow, how can we keep some of the heat on our customers so they do want to eat outside until the end of November. Hey, and God willing, if we do find a solution, that they do want to eat outside until December. I mean, they do this in Northern European countries. People are outside eating. They figured it out somehow, but, you know, with safety in mind, of course. We have to reach something that works for everybody.
Damien, we really appreciate the feedback, and I promise you we are committed to continuing to look at this. This is brand new in the city of Boston. These European countries may have been doing this for a lot longer. I think we've been pretty flexible in the last 6 months. We are just taking it one step at a time. If we could go faster, we would. Right now, it's no to tents. That may not always be the case, but right now with the street open with 2 lanes and cars going down and sight lines, it's not workable. It's not off the table forever, but right now, with all of the different elements that go into making this happen between now and December 1st, that's not something we're able to move on.
And part of the no tents, just to echo the chairwoman's comments, has been specifically based on the concerns raised by Boston Fire regarding the sight lines. And the North End, again, as you all know much better than we do, is an incredibly unique situation. And there have been numerous public safety concerns raised. So again, we want to think creatively. We're here to work with you. We're here to adapt. But at this time, tents are not permitted on public property.
Leslie, just to add to that, a lot of the even with the umbrellas in the North End, there was issues when an apparatus is trying to get down a street and not having the space, not wanting to hit an umbrella and it injure somebody sitting on a patio. There was also a street that an apparatus couldn't get down at all, and it was 2 boxes were knocked. It was a huge emergency, and they couldn't even get that way. So it's not that we don't want to work with people, it's merely just safety.
Thank you, Janelle. That's helpful. And Janelle, while you're on, one of the questions maybe you or Christina could answer is from Frank Polino asked, can we store the propane tanks in a locked container on our front doorstep, but not on the sidewalk? The restaurant's private entranceway that's not being used because the restaurant is closed. Is that feasible? Obviously, with the understanding that everything needs to be inspected.
I mean, if it's in their doorway on their step, it still needs to have the feet of the structure. You can't be within 3 to 5 feet. Well, actually, no, they couldn't store it in the doorway because
It's egress.
the egress issue, even if the restaurant's closed.
If you feel as though you're having issues with where to store the fuel, someone from the fire department is going to be out for a pre-site inspection, and they will work with you. They will help you. They'll try to figure it out with you. And it's at their discretion that they can approve it. So, you know, if you're having issues with that, that should be able to be resolved once they come out and do the inspection.
Okay, so can I speak? Can you hear me? This is Frank.
Sure, Frank, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a step up, it's about 6 inches, and just the doorway that I'm talking about, I'll only take about 12 inches by 30 inches. I'm only going to ask for meters, talk about 2 tanks, and this will be locked and will be bolted. This entryway does not block any other entryways to the apartments above it. It's just going to be my front door. It's outside. It's not enclosed. It's open. This is.
I'm sorry, Frank, you keep cutting in and out. For your specific proposal, why don't you email licensing board at boston.gov and we can connect you with fire so that you can discuss.
All right. I'll do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And again, to echo what the chair said, we want to keep brainstorming. We want to keep working with you. We want to think creatively, and we're committed to do that. So any ideas you have, bring them to us. We're here to talk through them. We just received another question. Can the city place speed bumps on Hanover? I don't speak for the Boston Fire Department, but that question was raised on a call earlier, and Deputy Chief Tully did specifically note that it's a public safety hazard, and that even if it's mere seconds, that could slow down an emergency apparatus reaching its destination, means that they cannot at this time be placed on Hanover Street. Are there other questions? I'm sorry. We received another question from Warren why the tents have previously been used for various festivals. And we have had this question. So in the past, and hopefully in the future, tents have been and will be used for festivals. In those instances, the streets have been closed down to traffic. Again, the issue is there are flame retardant tents, absolutely, but the issue is the sight lines. There are concerns about both emergency apparatus and just common everyday vehicles not being able to properly see down the street with those tents.
I mean, having said what you just said about things being closed for the festival, I know this is crazy and everyone's going to jump off of buildings, but wouldn't winter be the perfect time to close off Hanover Street if you're ever going to do it? And then we'd be able to put the tents feast-like. We'd be able to have it nice and toasty, not toasty, but warm enough. And, you know, we'd be kicking in that meals tax coffer as well, besides making everybody happy.
Thank you, Damien. I'm going to ask John Romano, and John, I'm sorry I neglected you. If you want to go ahead and say a few words.
So just kind of to talk a little bit about the tents for festivals and then the same thing with closure of the streets. So Warren and Damien, thank you for bringing up those issues. I appreciate it. I also apologize for my phone ringing during the middle of this as well. But as we go through, one of the things I really just kind of wanted to touch upon was reiterating what Leslie said. Because the streets are closed, because that's a closed off area, and because we're able to control kind of that, once that street is closed, we're able to control that spot, as well as be able to maneuver those tents. If anything needed to get down there for any emergency reason, we would see that, and there would be a couple other things we'd have to move along those way, but those streets are closed just to the common traffic. Damien, to also bring up your point then about the sight lines and closing down Hanover Street and Salem Street, it's been looked at and it's something that's still under review with transportation and that we keep looking at, but we run into significant issues whenever looking at closing down Hanover Street or closing down Salem Street in any capacity. And so we keep trying to figure out and look at that as an alternative, and we continue to try to find creative ways to do so, or even, you know, different ways that we can. I don't want to speak fully on the transportation department's behalf of this, but I know that it has been looked at and it is something that has been a serious consideration and will continue to be. But again, not at the cost of any public safety means that we need to be able to make sure we maintain.
Thank you, John. And I do just want to very briefly note that Michael Bonetti from Counselor Lydia Edwards' office is also on, and Michael's been a great partner with the mayor's office and the board throughout all of this. So thank you, Michael, for all of your hard work. I also want to note that Todd Liming from the Public Improvement Commission has joined us. Todd, again, I think as many of you know, has been integral, just as Rebecca Fu from our office, in this entire program. Are there any other questions?
Leslie, I have one more thing to add. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maria.
I just want to extend my thank you for all the above and beyond and accessibility that has been offered to us as restaurants and other merchants. And I think most significant is that when street seating was permitted, it allowed us to optimize those of us that have PPP loans that you know are maturing in October. So in the absence of having revenue to offset the benefit of the PPPs, we would have been lost without anything. So I want to just say thank you and just keep up all the good work, and us along with our fellow restaurateurs and other merchants across the city to have patience, tolerance, and understanding. And God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add one more thing. If you have some ideas about how you would like to rearrange the seating inside your restaurant and you're not certain if it's appropriate, give us a call, email us, or send me a picture. We'll talk you through it. We've seen other municipalities where the restaurants might be a little bit bigger, take full advantage of some of the bar space, but there's a couple of things to keep in mind. You want to make sure that the service to those bar tables is not from behind the bar, but it's from the restaurant. That's ABCC. And that's actually, I'm sorry, that is a state guideline. That's from the state guidance. And you want to make sure that there is an extension off that bar to accommodate the 6 feet that you need between people. But we can talk you through that. We've seen examples of where it's been successful. It might be something that works for some of these restaurants.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? And again, we're always here. We're always here via email. Any proposals you have, any creative ideas you have, we're here to work with you. You obviously know your industry far better than we do, even as the regulators, and we're really just here to help in any way we can. And we appreciate everyone making time to come on today. We know you have very busy schedules, and we look forward to working with you moving forward. All right, thank you, everyone.